What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show here. It is Wednesday, April 17th, 2019, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday, and another interesting weekend of whatever it is we've got to be keeping us interested. Okay, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions here. And let me get things sorted out just a little tiny bit here. And there we go. All right, so getting on into it. A lot of people still talking about Notre Dame. A lot of people still wondering if, in fact, it was not an accident. Glenn Beck is definitely out there pushing the idea that this may have been a continuation of the wave of vandalism and arson that has been hitting French Catholic churches for quite some time. And there are now two videos out there which purport to show unexplained individuals at the top of the church just prior to the fire. One is this character who very much looks like Osama bin Laden. I think that video is a fake. And then there's another one where there's an individual. It's too blurry to see who it is, but there's definitely a flash of light. Again, could be a fake. We don't really know. There's a lot of people likes to play these hoaxes out there here. And so we do need to be very, very careful, that we don't get suckered in to somebody's idea of a hoax. And that's one of the things that really bothers me about this event is how many people think this is some kind of a big joke. This is some kind of a joke. We're going to make fun of it. We're going to make fun of the Catholics here. And, don't get me wrong. I make fun of the Catholics every time they get outed for, molesting the little kiddies and everything. But Notre Dame, that was an historically, artistically, architecturally important building. And I'm rather appalled at the people who think it's okay to mock it. It's okay to make fun of it. And I think one of the downsides of the modern social media internet age is that it gives people a sense of impunity to go on out and just be rude, because nobody can come back and come at them again other than to be rude back on social media. And so they feel, I'm on social media, I'm immune here, I can go on out, I can say rude things about Melania Trump, I can say bad things about Notre Dame, I can say bad things about Michael Rivero, I can do all this stuff and nothing bad will happen to me. Well, restraint and civility shouldn't be based on whether you think bad things are going to happen to you. At least when I was growing up, civility was based on civility. Just saying that there was a reason to be polite, to be kind, to be gentle, to be civil with each other. And that seems to have gone away. And it seems to be an artifact of the social media age where everybody thinks they can go on out there and just pound on people and diss them and say all kinds. And even Donald Trump does it. And that may be part of the problem where everybody thinks, well, the president's doing it, I can do it here. So I think it's a weakening of our culture. I think it's a weakening of our society when we stop being civil. And I don't want to see it. And everybody who's listening to the show knows I am not a religious man. But I feel the loss of Notre Dame from the historic, architectural sense. It is a great loss. As would be, for example, the collapse of the Sphinx or a pyramid somewhere. And I don't think it's appropriate to make fun of it or to diss it in any way. I don't think it's appropriate behavior at all. And I regret the lack of civility that I'm seeing out there on social media. Anyway, getting on back to the cathedral itself, it turns out the great organ did suffer some damage after all. Yesterday they were saying it didn't suffer any damage, but of course they're still getting the debris and the burned wood off of it, and it did suffer a little bit of damage. Now, it had been refurbished 20 years ago, gone through a renovation. So while there are still some of the pipes that go back to medieval times, most of the organ is only 20 years old. And they're going to be renovating that as well, obviously. Okay, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates. We're just now rejoining our network here. And Paul Joseph Watson also had a comment out here talking about how BuzzFeed ran defense for the vile people who celebrated the Notre Dame fire. Now, I know there's a lot of people who celebrated the fact that Al-Aqsa caught on fire yesterday, or actually on the same day as the Notre Dame fire. And I don't know, there's this thing where everybody wants to burn everybody else's religious icons. We know that Israel wants to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, and probably most of the Christian sites as well. And I understand this is a very instinctive part of human nature. When you go into another country, you go on in and you're fighting because your God told you to go and smite the wicked and the sinners and the infidels. And so you go on in and you basically destroy their holy places. I don't agree with that. It's a big planet. I think there's enough room for everybody's holy places. I really do. One of the best moments I like in the movie The Kingdom of Heaven, directed by Ridley Scott, is at the very end when Salahuddin has taken the city of Jerusalem, and he goes into this church, and there's a cross lying on the floor. And he just picks it up and with respect, reverence, gently sets it on the table, on the altar. I think that's appropriate. If you're going to be religious, shouldn't you be respectful of everybody's religion? Respect first your own, obviously. But where did this whole thing come from of you have to go around destroying the symbols and the worship places of the other religions? I want to know where that started, because that's responsible for a lot of suffering. So anyway, Paul Joseph Watson was out there being very critical, talking about BuzzFeed, where apparently BuzzFeed thinks it's okay to make fun of the Notre Dame fire. And no, it is a tragedy. Even for those of us who are not religious, this is a tremendous, tremendous loss. I think right now the total funds that have been donated for reconstruction are now 600 million euros. So they're going to be able to do a proper job of rebuilding the interior, rebuilding the organ, and it's going to be a new and better cathedral. And here is where it gets kind of interesting. A lot of people have said that the burning of Notre Dame is a metaphor for the collapse of the West, and they may very well be right, because it turns out that there had been concern raised recently over the condition of Notre Dame. That, obviously, much of it 800 years old. that the wood frame was very old, very dry, very flammable. Now, there was a fire alarm system, and it actually sounded off twice the night of the fire. The first time it went off, they couldn't find the fire. The second time, the fire was up in the rafters, and they couldn't get at it to put it out. So, but it had been known that the cathedral was at risk. Now, the cathedral is owned by the government of France. The really old cathedrals in France are all owned by the government. They are operated by the Catholic Church, but they're owned by the government of France. And the government of France basically, they had started a $6 million renovation to replace the spire at the top and a few other things. But apparently, as we could see from the way it burned up, it was a disaster waiting to happen. It was a disaster waiting to happen. And, but again, the good news is the 14 statues, the copper statues that were at the top of the building, those had already been removed for the renovation. They've been saved and preserved. The altar is saved. The cross above the altar is saved. The organ is sort of, kind of okay. They can repair it. Much of the other artwork and the relics were saved as well. So it will get rebuilt. These things do get rebuilt. Most of the so-called historic buildings aren't as historic as you might think they are. If you ever been to the White House? You say, oh, the White House, and you think John Adams. Nope. That White House has been completely rebuilt several times throughout history. There's only one section of the White House that dates all the way back to the original building, and that's like one little tiny corner that they make a point of preserving for that very reason. But the rest of it, I think most of the interior was completely redone during Truman's administration. Anyway, we're going to take a phone call now. Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I hate doing this to you, but I got to make a correction. The government of France doesn't own anything. People that live in France own everything.
Okay.
So it's actually the taxpayers' cathedral, right?
Yes.
Unless you know something I don't.
Well, I'm just going from the research that I did the other day, which said that Notre Dame is actually owned by the government of France, which mean the people of France. But whoever was in charge of it, whether it's the government of France or the people of France, they knew there was a problem.
Yep. When stuff like this happens, Mike, I just don't believe it. My first reaction is, what really happened, which is exactly what your show's called. And just because, like you pointed out, over the years, that all the lies we've been fed, Macron should he really be running France at this point? Is his popularity even above 30%? You have the yellow vests over there protesting.
Mm-hmm.
This morning I was reading the news from a couple of different websites, and the people of France are united. Hallelujah, they've been saved. They are now one again.
Yes.
I don't think so. It's like everything else. It's like that New Zealand shooting. And there was a video of that, for crying out loud. So that's easy to pick apart. But I'm not convinced. I'm not saying I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that, but I'm just saying I am not convinced whatsoever. These people, they'll do anything. They'll do anything. Nothing is sacred to these people. Absolutely nothing.
No, I understand that. I understand that. And I was kind of wondering if Macron might in fact blame the Yellow Vests for the fire at Notre Dame, but so far it hasn't happened.
Well, I'm sure if his popularity plunges even more, he'll probably find a way to blame it on somebody to try and garner, sympathy. But as far as I'm concerned, you know what? And I mean this quite literally, his fault. Anything that happens in France is his fault. It's his watch, right? He was put there for a reason, to run everything that the people can't, because they're obviously working and paying taxes. They're paying these people to do this stuff. So, I'm getting too old to pussyfoot around with this kind of stuff. Especially the last 7, 8, since 2001, it's right there out in the open now. I don't care how they try and hide it. There's always ways that you can see through it. When it's, as soon as it started it happened, I figured, okay, hot work, right? They're doing some hot work on that, with the contractors. Maybe something let loose, right? A cigarette. And then, of course, the next one, which is a false flag to garner sympathy.
Well, see, here's the problem. Here's the problem. If they were going to exploit Notre Dame and blame somebody for it, they would have assigned the blame by now. The longer they wait, the less emotional the impact is for most people, and the less they're going to be able to exploit that emotionality. If you remember on 9/11, I mean, before the buildings had even come down all the way, oh, it's Osama bin Laden. It's definitely Osama bin Laden. And they were out there casting the blame. In this case, they didn't have somebody to blame for it, which is why I tend to think it genuinely is an honest accident.
Right. Who are they going to blame, though, Mike? Are they going to blame Muslims? They can't do that.
They could do that, or they could blame the Yellow Vests.
Well, see, I never thought of that one, and well, there's something there, but they don't even have to assign blame, right? All those poor French people, and like this morning, I said they're united. They're united. No, they're not. No, they're not. The French people aren't united. I don't really think any of the Western countries, the people inside of them, are united. The government has been picking away at us for too long, trying to divide us all up. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I mean, I'm sorry. It's what do you? I'm sorry. I mean, I just can't believe this stuff anymore. I really can't. Anyway, thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate your time. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now, as you know, one of the head scratchers regarding Notre Dame is the fact that part of the Al-Aqsa Mosque was also set on fire at the same time. And there's yet another interesting coincidence. Apparently, Michelle Obama was on a dinner cruise on the River Seine in Paris when the Notre Dame Cathedral caught fire on Monday night. And apparently they were looking at what was going on. So that's another interesting coincidence to be there here. All right, so let's talk about Julian Assange, because they're trying to make an example out of him. They don't really have a case. The statute of limitations has expired on pretty much everything they want to charge him with. They're trying to say that somehow this is linked in with terrorism, but it isn't. And his prosecution is much more than attempting to hack a password. It's an attack on independent journalism. We'll be right back after these few words. Okay, I'm sorry I'm a little late coming back here. I had let's just say we had an emergency here. So, yes, we're here. We're here on the air. Sorry about that. All right, so we're talking about Julian Assange, and we're talking about how the case is a clear attempt to punish Assange for publishing information the government did not want published. This is not about a single failed attempt at cracking a password. And you would think that corporate media would be on the side of Assange here, because this is an attack on everybody who seeks to hold the government accountable for their actions, which is what the media is supposed to be doing. That's why there is that First Amendment. The corporate media, for the most part, is out there demonizing Julian Assange. Oh, he's a bad person. He tried to crack a password. Oh, horror of horrors. He tried to crack a password, and he embarrassed the government. So what if we blew up a Reuters film crew with a 30-millimeter chain gun? I mean, bad things happen during a war, and, Reuters has got lots of camera crews. It's not like they had a shortage of them. Seems to be the attitude. All right, let's take a phone call from Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You know what I find amazing? They never talk about what's in the emails or what, the leaking of the Iraq war logs in Afghanistan. They never talk about the in-depth part of that. They don't want to talk about that, so they'll always just say, he's a traitor, just like, Meghan McCain did, and all these people. And Mike, what is he's going to be brought, if he's brought here, to Alexandria, Virginia.
Yeah.
Isn't that like, that's basically the devil's den there.
Yep.
He'll never get a fair shake. And I just want people to think about this. Like, they got secret courts, man. Secret court. This is like Stasi crap. Come on, people! Like secret courts, it's a clown world. They're calling it a clown world. I can't. Judge Napolitano called him a hero, and he is a hero. And like I said the other day, if you take away your freedom of speech and freedom of the press, then you got nothing left here.
Yeah,
it's gone.
Yep,
it's absolutely gone. And some people don't have a problem with that. Mike, I'm curious. What do you think about Rand Paul coming out and saying like they should basically talk to Assange? There's people out there that think, oh, it's a 4D chess move by Trump to take down the deep state.
No,
it's not a 4. If John Bolton wasn't with him and Elliot Abrams and Mike Pompeo, I might think that, but. This is not a 4D chess move.
No, it is not.
This is about a threat to this cabal we got. And John Bolton's part of that group. Remember, he was one of the architects of the Iraq War. And Elliot Abrams with the Iran-Contra death squads. So this guy, Trump's not going to save this guy. No way. Like I said, I might have thought he would if he didn't have these people around him. But which leads me to Trump on, Mike, what did you take on this? He vetoed they passed against Saudi Arabia with the Yemenis war.
That one, it wasn't unexpected, but I'm obviously very disappointed in Trump for doing that. That in point of fact, he has... he's vetoed the bill. He's basically wants the Yemen war to continue.
It's just, I know Joe still supports him because he's, I don't know Trump though. I live in New Jersey. I know people worked in Atlantic City, and Trump's from, New York, Atlantic City, and all that. But we don't know this guy. I voted for him. I had hope in him. But like I said, I don't know him personally. Nobody does.
Nope.
People who support him or don't, So I don't know what. And Mike, did you see this other report about they pulled the Foley on Trump? So this is what they're saying about the dead kids and dead ducks thing with the Russia Skripal fake poisoning thing. you hear about that?
Yes.
And everybody should know this. The Scribbles is linked to the Christopher Steele dirty dossier. And why isn't Trump firing the head of the CIA, the intelligence, for pulling this? Like
he really should. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey, and we're talking about, well, all kinds of different things here. But I think overall, again, looking at the fact that Trump did veto that bill that Congress passed to end U.S. involvement in the war in Yemen, I think it's very telling that Trump wants to be a war president, that he thinks war is cool, that he thinks it's okay to just, go on out and kill all these people. And it certainly is not the tone that he set during the campaign in 2016.
And you throw on all the Twitter stuff. I wish he'd stop doing that already. There's a lot of people who, still support Trump. They wish he would stop too. Like, he's got to stop twittering stuff. And he has the ability to fire anybody, like the people around him, and put good people in. He's not. That's what I'm trying to say, like to Joe from Tennessee. I mean, he's got crappy people around him and bad people. They're evil. So
they
why
are.
would he put
And
good people in?
Again, getting back to this idea that the CIA literally showed him phony pictures to trick him into a hard stance on Russia following the supposed Skripal poisoning. I don't know why he's not firing those people right now. If that was me, I'd say, how dare you lie to me? You're out of here. You are fired with prejudice.
And he has a greater obligation, Mike, to like the citizens of the United States, not just the people who voted for him, but even to the people who didn't vote for him. To let this Russia thing drag on with this Venezuela thing. Now Cuba, did you hear about Cuba? He's gonna allow you to sue back since 1957. So after the Communist Party in Cuba took over, he's gonna allow you to sue to get your whatever company you can sue that they took away from the Americans back in the day. I'm like, what the heck? I mean, I don't know anymore, Mike. It just blows my mind.
Yep.
And now they're saying like $25. If you're an American, if you go over there, you only can spend up to $25. You got to, when you come back, you got to like show what you bought. I mean, this is not like freedom of anything, man. Like, if you don't like Cuba, fine, but like, who the hell are you to tell me where I can or can't go? I mean,
I know
I don't know.
It's completely over the top right now.
And then Europe is moving away from the United because of with the Boeing thing, Airbus, and now like we put tariffs on them. Now they're going to stick I don't know. But Mike, have a good show. Okay.
All right, thanks an awful lot, and we're going to switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
We lost Joe.
We lost Joe. Okay, so let's go to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, there was a clip, I think, that was on of a freshman congresswoman that you had on. I think the source was Investment Watch blog the other day. And I played it, and this freshman female congresswoman was saying how, talking about the freshman class, about Democrat, by the way, about how glad she was to work with all the freshmen especially all the veterans and CIA people that have come in. And I wanted to remind everybody out there just how many CIA candidates ran and won seats
Yes.
in the House of Representatives. And by the way, some of the veterans were intel people as well. They
Yes.
were just, service intel. And mind you, these are people who can do dirty tricks like they did to Trump. They can make black donations and covert donations. They can smear people, opponents, and so on. And now they are direct members of Congress.
Yep.
And when you think about that, Mike, you begin to see, I mean, Trump is a gutless, brainless pig, frankly.
Yes.
But he's an imprisoned. On top of that, he's an imprisoned, gutless, brainless pig. I don't know what the old Chuck Schumer quote about they can get you 6 ways from Sunday. And then when you think about, Mike, of course, the precedent has been set. The intel community has been totally weaponized in the political process. And then you think that when you take that even further, there's no way that there can be there are checks and balances in the United States anymore with the total surveillance and all the information that they have from the NSA and the FBI and the CIA and DEA and all the intercepts that they have from all of us. And if we're clean, maybe our parents aren't, or maybe our kids aren't, or whatever. Maybe our spouses aren't. But I don't believe there can ever be an impeachment without the acquiescence of the intelligence community anymore. I don't believe if they want it, it can happen. I believe, but if they don't want it, they can squash it. And the two big evils in my life, in my mind, the biggest ones are the central bank, which the central banks and the intelligence agencies. And there's no way that any sort of democracy can coexist with those two institutions.
Nope. I absolutely agree with you. I find it very alarming that so many members of Congress are connected with the intelligence community. And I vaguely recall that I think it was literally in the old Soviet Union where if you were KGB or GRU, you could not run for political office. And I know there are rules here in the United States. For example, if you're special forces, you can never have a rank above major. I mean, there are certain classes of people in any society that you view as being inherently dangerous and destabilizing, and you try and say, okay, we're going to contain these people, but apparently not in Congress.
I can tell you that the special forces thing, that's not the case, Mike. And then I look back at Yuri Andropov. Remember him? He was head of the KGB. He became head of the party. And even going back to when they had to arrest Beria. Beria was, of course, jockeying for the head of the party as well.
Yes.
So I'm not. I think it should be that way. There shouldn't be intel operatives be able to do that, but we wouldn't be able to tell who they were anyways. They can covertly finance anything, and they are really dangerous. And think about the checks and balances out there, everybody listening, and about how they're the arbiters now of whether a president survives or doesn't survive. They're involved in every election. They're involved in every transaction that you make that's electronic. They have access to, and they can get to you as well. So it's really it's Big Brother, big time. So
it really is. I mean, the danger of intelligence operatives, they are literally trained to think that anything they get away with is okay, including killing people. There is no moral restraint on them whatsoever. And of course, as an intelligence operative, you want them to be that way. But I think it's very dangerous to have them in part of the civilian government, again, because of that very same mindset.
Yeah, and remember, Mike, remind everybody out there that the intelligence agencies bugged their own oversight committees and threatened them. I mean, that's where we are, really. They bugged their own oversight committees.
Yes.
And nothing was ever done about that, Mike. Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely was the case.
Watch and see these people who just got into Congress, and there's others there as well. Watch and see how it will be a natural thing for them to float to the House and the Senate Intelligence Committee staffs, or and they are going to be, the Intelligence Committee will be overseeing itself even there.
Yep.
And it's only getting worse.
It is. It's absolutely getting worse. I mean, I don't know how this country can survive much longer.
Did you, Mike? And now they're enlisting, as you see in the Trump Russiagate thing. It becomes clear that they had cooperated internationally with other intelligence agencies, certainly the MI6 and possibly Australia, in coming up with this Russiagate thing. So they have their own alliances. They have their own statecraft.
Yes.
It's really something when you think about it.
It is. It's a very, very scary situation. And, of course, the fact that intelligence agencies have their own statecraft and their own alliances. We've known about the Five Eyes. I mean, that goes back to the 1980s, where they were cooperating with these other countries for the Echelon program.
And of course, Mockingbird and the paramilitary thing. And then when you think about the fact that nobody really knows what their budget is because that's limited to the Intel Committee, right?
Yes.
Which they'll control anyways. And some of that's even classified above that level, I believe. And then they have all the stuff that they do that's off the books, that's illegal, like smuggling drugs, smuggling body parts, probably, murder for hire, probably, certainly blackmailing people and intervening on behalf of companies who, if you can think of it, they're doing it.
Yes.
And they're making money off of it. And so we have no idea how much money they make. Not even Congress has any idea what kind of money they make. And they're totally unregulated at all.
Yes.
I mean, if they're doing their own oversight committee, they're completely rogue. So,
they are. They absolutely are. And, originally it was supposed to be that, intelligence agencies would go to Congress for funding for covert operations, which gave Congress some oversight and control. But again, going back to the 1980s, actually even before that, all the way back to Vietnam, the CIA engaged in its own drug smuggling operations to raise money for covert operations that didn't have to be reviewed by Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Military was involved in that as well. Military intelligence was, and none of it's clean. And then, of course, they tortured people and destroyed all the evidence and claimed that they lost it. It's just getting worse. No, they're completely unaccountable. They have power of life and death over people.
Yes, they do.
And they're surveilling us all.
Yep.
So I'm going to leave you with that wonderful thought, Mike, and there you go.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for the phone call, Peter. We're going to switch over to Terry in California. Terry, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I was told Zionists are in firm control of those intelligence agencies that Peter was talking about. And also that's the group that would like nothing better than to get a war going between the Christians and the Muslims.
True.
And there's this guy, David Horowitz, has got these blogs he puts out to email to the unsuspecting, naive Americans. One of them is Jihad Watch, and the other one, Pam Geller.
Yes.
And he had a blog out this morning about big paragraph on all the Muslims over in Paris and all the attacks that they did on the Christian churches. And he didn't come right out and say that the Notre Dame thing was absolutely the result of the Muslims, but he certainly implied it and pointed the finger at them. So this comes under the heading of never let a good crisis go to waste. So if there's a crisis over there, take advantage of it and push your agenda. And that's the only thought I'd want to make. But I'd like people just to try to look below the surface on these things. Try to find out the people's motives that send you these things. Just don't take it on face value. All right, Mike, thanks. And we'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Terry. We're going to let you go here. I mean, frankly, I think if there was an agenda to stir up warfare, if you will, between Christians and Muslims, it would be all over the corporate media. And I'm not seeing enough of it to suggest that that really is somebody's agenda. I mean, yes, Glenn Beck is out there and a couple of other people are out there saying it may have been the Muslims. But again, if you go back and you look at 9/11, it was just pure saturation. From the moment 9/11 happened until we went into Afghanistan, it was just pure saturation. It was Osama bin Laden. It was the Muslims. Oh, those bad Muslims, they did 9/11. And we're not seeing that here, which is why I think it genuinely was an accidental fire. Okay, let's go to Gabriel in New York. Aloha, Gabriel. Thank you for waiting. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Appreciate your show, and I appreciate you letting me in, say my piece. I just wanted to, I have to tell you honestly, I'm a little, not that I'm a wonderful Trump supporter, but we don't know what's going on with Trump. Somebody may have a gun to his head. And here's a suggestion to both Peter, who calls the president a stupid pig, and you agreed with him, Mike, and Dustin, why don't you take $1 billion each, and you two could run for, Dustin and Peter from Los Angeles could run for president and vice president and solve the problems. Just a thought.
Yeah, but Trump did spend the money. He ran for president. We supported him. He made a bunch of promises which are not being kept. Okay, and I don't care what the reason might be, if somebody's got a gun to his head or to his family's head. I'm not looking for excuses. I'm looking for something to get done. Supposedly, the presidency is the most powerful office in the world. And, certainly Trump had no hesitancy to veto that Yemen war resolution. But he's dropped the ball on the vaccine safety, on honest elections, on lowering medical costs, and the rest of it. And I'm sorry, he's a disappointment. Anyway, Gabriel, got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go back to the phones to Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Hi. Just parenthetically, regard to the, I think the last caller, he mentioned Pamela Geller.
Yes.
I remember when she was guest on many shows and everything, and she had that drawing Muhammad contest down in Texas. Remember where some guy tried to shoot it up or something like that?
Yeah.
Remember that? So yeah, but the thing I noticed about it, she's not on anywhere anymore. I didn't know what happened with that, but that's just by way of passing. So what I wanted to mention was I heard something today on some show somewhere about. Remember Cheryl Atkinson, the network reporter who was fired because she went against the grain?
Yes.
Okay, so I heard something somewhere today that she is on this thing on a video. It's on YouTube. It's accessed on James Rosen TV at Twitter. James Rosen TV at Twitter. And there's a video with her and I think with him talking about something that I remember, but it was very quickly passed over about maybe 10, 15 years ago. Well, you remember when a lot of Iranian Jews were leaving, and some went to Los Angeles, New York, and a lot of them went to Israel. And some of these Iranian Jews became Mossad agents. And, they speak fluent Parsi, and they fit in with the Iranian population. And this video talks about how when that happened, they went in there. There was a Mossad operation. They accessed, I think, 110 high-security file safes, and they got access to about 20% of them, and it had all of these nuclear projects in limbo because of the IAEA. Anyhow, so. I just wanted to mention they mentioned that. I didn't see the video. In fact, I don't even have internet. I listened to you on the telephone listen line. The video was accessed at James Rosen TV on Twitter. And if you would look at it, I don't know what it says exactly, but maybe you yourself, because I know you talk a lot about how it's sort of like a fable that Israel raises about Iran, etc. And I just thought, like I said, I didn't see it, but they say that there's a lot to it, what Israel is claiming. So, like, again, we'll leave it up in the air until you look at it, and I just wanted to say that.
Okay, well, my response to that, of course, is to remind everybody about the so-called laptop of death, which was a laptop that was filled with all of what appeared to be blueprints for nuclear weapons. And it was basically laundered, if you will, through MEK. And presented to the world as proof of Iran's desire for a nuclear weapon. And the corporate media made a big deal about it until real nuclear weapons engineers looked at the actual documents on the laptop and said, this stuff is junk. It looks like somebody just went out to the internet and web searched a bunch of diagrams and documents and put it all together, but none of this stuff would work. Much of it is completely erroneous, and it's more of a movie prop than anything else. So we need to be very, very careful about any time Israel says, we have proof that Iran or Iraq or anybody else has got nuclear weapons, because they've been caught lying before.
That's why I asked you to look at it. That's why I want you to take. I don't know what it is, but maybe you can look at it and tell us what you see.
Well, I'll take a look at it, but again, I think it's likely to be another hoax. I looked at it when it first came on out. Anyway, Jim, we got to let you go. Take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. All right. Now, we're talking about Julian Assange. And apparently, just hours after Julian Assange was kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London, police officers in Ecuador detained the Swedish citizen and open source developer Ola Bini. And they seized him as he prepared to travel from his home in Quito to Japan, claiming he was attempting to flee the country in the wake of Assange's arrest. Bini had in fact booked the vacation long ago and had publicly mentioned it on his Twitter account. But apparently they've decided to just grab him for some reason. It's going to be an ugly, ugly mess. Over in Peru, the former president, Alan Garcia, has died, apparently during a police raid regarding a massive corruption investigation. He shot himself, and he was rushed to the hospital. They put him into surgery, and he didn't make it. The doctors provided cardiac resuscitation 3 times, and they were operating on the 69-year-old, but he didn't make it. Now, this is an amazing story. It's about a guy named Micah Herndon. He's a 31-year-old Marine veteran. He served in Afghanistan, and while he was deployed there, 2 Marines he was serving with and a British journalist were killed by an improvised explosive device. One of these men was his best friend, Matthew Ballard. And Micah, in an interview with the Washington Post, said, survivor's guilt is real. And he says, I definitely have it because I was the lead machine gunner on that convoy, and I didn't see the bomb that was buried. I lived that every single day. So he wanted to run the Boston Marathon in honor of their comrades, in honor of their memories, rather, of his comrades here. And around mile 20 out of 26, Herndon's Achilles tendon began to hurt. He tried to power through and keep running, but he literally wound up. He refused volunteers who were going to help him, and he literally crossed the final stretch. He crawled over it before he would allow people to help him into a wheelchair. So that's a man with sand. It's absolutely a man with sand. Okay, another little story here. This one from Rutherford.organization, talking about from Jesus Christ to Julian Assange, when dissidents become enemies of the states. And that's exactly where we are right now, where the U.S. government and corporate interests view those of us who ask questions as enemies. We're enemies because we won't go along with the official story. We won't simply accept what we're told at face value. We won't buy the products. We won't have the injections. And that makes us enemies. We're a danger to their profits. So this article is out there saying, well, it starts with a quote. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, and that, of course, is from George Orwell. And when exposing a crime is treated as committing a crime, you are being ruled by criminals, and that also seems to be the case right now. We seem to have a criminal government, whether it's political corruption, rigged elections, keeping us all chronically ill to maximize the profit for the medical industrial complex. It does seem like we have a government that is itself criminal. We know that cybercrime is completely out of control. Our government's doing nothing about it. According to Kaspersky, the Equation Group hacker collective is the NSA. So they're just plundering and pillaging and taking whatever they can here. All right, we're going to take a phone call now from Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was supposed to follow Dustin, who, by the way, I like. But then my neighbor came over with his tractor, and he wanted me to help him get something out of the mud. So
okay, I know how that works.
Do when you live in the country. Yeah,
I know how that works. I drove a tractor when I was a kid.
Yeah, well, we've had a flood here, and one of his tractor parts was in the flood for, making the field plowed. So I had to go in there. I have a pair of waders, so I went in there and we hooked it up, and he pulled it out with a cable. So that's done. But that's typical around here.
Yeah.
So and they're good neighbors. I like country people. But I wanted to talk about Notre Dame, and I really, I heard that guy on Alex Jones today, Zangambi or whatever, and I kind of think this is some kind of an occult ritual. I know you're not a religious person, but that doesn't mean there are not occult people out there that are.
Oh, I know they are.
And it's very convenient to be having a remodeling to take the valuable statues down so they aren't burned, and to actually, I'd really like to know more about the company that was doing the remodeling or the construction and their ties with the government. I mean, remember 9/11, they were doing an internet upgrade, putting new fiber optic cables in the buildings. I think this is going to slowly come out. And at first I was kind of thinking, well, maybe the Muslims did it, the Islamists, but I'm starting to think, with the yellow vests and what's going on in France and the occult ritual aspects of it, I really recommend anybody has the time to look at Mark Passio's 9/11 as an occult ritual. These people do send their secret signals in events like this, and I think it does sit on the old Temple of Jupiter, which was a Roman church.
Yes.
And there's a lot of esoteric, Illuminati, Freemason, Knights of the Templar stuff that goes on that the uninitiated, and I'm one, but I look into it, don't know. And I got to say, my initial feeling in my gut was equal to 9/11 when I saw this happening. Just that human response from, just seeing it, just that something is very, very evil with this. And I felt the same way, obviously, with 9/11. And there's not the loss of life that there was at 9/11, but I think this is actually culturally more significant.
Yes.
And it really is striking at the heart of Christendom. And I did find it interesting what you were saying earlier, that these buildings are mostly owned by the government of France. I didn't know that. I thought that the Catholic Church owned them. That's quite odd. But you got to wonder, people talk about how old the wood was up in the, roof. I mean, that wood was old 600 years ago. It was old 500 years ago. It was old 300 years ago. It didn't spontaneously combust. And like I said, with this, having these people there, so-called renovation, it'd be easy enough for them to get up there and soak some kerosene, you know, a thermite or whatever they might use, and just light her off. I also find it very odd, like, to hear about the fire department and how late they were showing up. I mean, they showed up a half an hour after the fire went off.
Well, that's a little bit of a clarification. There was a fire alarm that went off, and the firefighters showed up, but they couldn't find the fire. And they stayed in Notre Dame until the second alarm rang, and that's when they found the fire that was up in the rafters. And that's the one that set the roof off.
All right, because they supposedly the main equipment didn't show up for another hour. But, you know, I think this is going to be like 9/11 in that the evidence is, the information will be out there, but it won't be covered by about it. We'll find out about it pretty soon. You have to ask the old question, who gains, you know? And I would look more at Macron and Rothschild type demonic Illuminati more than anybody else at this one, especially to put an end, you know, take the heat off with the yellow vest and the protests and the, you know, the hatred of the establishment that's going on in France right now.
Mm-hmm.
By both, by the Islamicists hate the establishment of France and the yellow vest. So this is a beautiful divide and conquer type strategy, and it's like I said, I do. When I started looking at 9/11, it drove me into looking into the secret societies and the Illuminati and all that as a motivation and the symbology of it all. And this is really incredible. I mean, did you look into that iGoat thing, that the pre-programming of this that they had?
Yeah, I've seen that animation before. It's a very interesting animation. Here's the thing, though: the object that is collapsing in that video is not Notre Dame. It's not even really close, and so they're just trying to plant that idea and say, "Oh, see, it was there. See, it was there." And again, it's one of the reasons why you've got to be very, very careful about the stuff that is being thrown out there. Now, again, what is missing from this story, if this was an intentional act, then there has to be a socio-political element to it, and we're not seeing it. We're not seeing media propaganda saying, oh, it's the Muslims, it's this, it's that, be angry, be upset over these people. And we're not seeing that part of it. So there's no payoff. There's no reveal, if you will. And that's why I think that you know, there's always going to be people out there saying, oh, it was a conspiracy, it was this, it was that. And at this point, I'm not convinced that this was anything other than an accident. I'm willing to have my mind changed, but I'm not seeing the stuff that would normally be associated with a deliberate burning of such an edifice for some kind of political gain. I'm not seeing the propaganda. I'm not seeing the editorial commentary that would go along with it to basically get to the payoff.
Yeah, there's no patsy, that's for sure. And I would, like you said, I do think they would love to blame it on the yellow vest, but they're probably not that stupid. But I don't know. It just at my gut level, something tells me there's a very evil thing behind this, and that to me that's just going by my natural feelings. And if it's just an accident, then I wouldn't be feeling that. So I'm going to keep my eyes on this one. And like I said, if it is like an honest fire that was started by, you know, a welding torch or something, there shouldn't be any cover-up. There should be a thorough investigation, so we can tell by the actual investigation that it's for real. Now, when they start shutting people up for just like insinuating possibilities, that makes my ears perk up a little bit. Like, why are you like, you know, not want to see this It's like 9/11. You say, well, why want to investigate it? And everybody has a shit fit. And it's the same way. It's like, what do you got to hide? Let's thoroughly investigate this, and I'd like to look into, once again, who the people that were doing the renovations were, and are they connected to any kind of government agencies or, intelligence services. Those are the kind of thing, you start finding Marvin Bush's outfit that was behind it. And, so that's the kind of thing I think we all should be looking for.
Well, the name of the company that was renovating the spire is out there, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head. It's some, again, there are elements missing here that should be present if this was a deliberate 9/11 style event.
Well, I kind of, you're right about that when you think about it. But at the same time, I'm still very skeptical on this one. But we'll see. I mean, it is a convenient thing to happen. Just as far as
why is it convenient? Who's it convenient for?
Well, it's convenient for the establishment of France in that it puts you won't see any yellow vest protest, I doubt, for the next several months.
I disagree.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I have a feeling they'll all be singing Kumbaya for a little while because that's for the good of the nation. This brings reality to the traditions of France. And that's what the establishment loves to play on, So,
well, we'll see. We'll see. But I would caution you. You talk about going on your gut and going on your feelings. Those are generally not good indicators of what's going on. You need to really rely on your intellect. Joe, we're going to let you go here and switch over to Mike in Brazil. Aloha, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mike in Brazil.
Hello? Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Are you hearing me?
I hear you now.
Hello. Okay, yeah, but for 1 second we've been cut off. I was going to talk about the assassination of Judge Scalia.
Yes.
Because it was an assassination, okay? Now, my theory is that since Hillary Clinton was 101% sure she was going to be the next president of the United States, I think she sent a goon squad to whack Scalia, and they did.
Yep.
And, nobody commits suicide and puts a pill over his face, okay? Secondly, the Justice of the Peace has no qualifications to declare a death natural or otherwise. So my opinion is that Hillary Clinton wanted to kill Scalia because he was one of the most conservative judges that you could have on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
He was famous for this. We all know that, right? So she wanted to get rid of this guy so she can appoint, thinking that she's going to be the next president. There was no doubt in her mind that she's going to be the president. So she sent somebody, she sent her goon squad and killed Scalia, thinking that she's going to create vacancy on the Supreme Court. And, she did. And I think Hillary Clinton could add this guy's body on her infamous body list. What do you think of this?
Well, the problem with that is that Scalia, unfortunately, died at a time when Obama could have appointed a judge. Of course, it would have been a liberal judge, so it really wouldn't have been up to Hillary. I'm convinced that Scalia was assassinated. I don't think there's enough information to lay the blame at Hillary.
So you think that Obama could have had plenty of opportunity to get rid of Scalia, and he did not. The problem is that Obama was not Hillary Clinton. Obama was orders of magnitude less evil than this witch, Hillary Clinton. So probably Obama wouldn't have cared because he was in the office anyways. So I don't think he would have had a reason to send somebody and whack Scalia. But Hillary had many reasons to get rid of Scalia because in her mind, she was already the president. Remember the actress running over the room? She beat up Podesta.
Yep.
Left him with a bloody face, broke his nose. This is a subject for comic books. And I was thinking, because nobody, I'm listening to your show like, religiously so, right? There is not one day during the week which I don't listen to the show. So listening to all these callers, nobody has raised this issue before, that Hillary might be responsible. It's a legitimate assessment that she might be responsible for the death of Scalia, since she was convinced, Mike. She was convinced she won the election. Or she was waiting there in front of the big screen TV with the champagne in her hand and just waiting to be declared the next president of the United States.
Yeah, she hadn't even written a concession speech. I mean, yeah, she thought she had it in the bag. There's no question about that. Anyway, listen,
Really?
Mike.
She thought she had it in the bag.
Mike, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words.
Thank Michael.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, a couple of callers have already talked about this earlier in the program, but our current director of the Central Intelligence Agency apparently played a trick on President Trump following the supposed Salisbury poisonings in Britain last year. Gina Haspel, who was the deputy director at the time, showed Trump pictures of children who were supposedly sickened by the Novichok and photographs of dead ducks that British officials claimed were inadvertently killed by the sloppy work of the Russian operatives. Now, as it turns out, there were no sick children. There were no dead ducks. So here is my question, and it's one that one of our callers mentioned as well. Why does Gina Haspel still have a job? I mean, if I were the president and I found out the head of the CIA had tricked me with staged photos, they would be out with prejudice. Absolutely. So why? What does Haspel have on Trump? What a mess this government is. Oh, boy. All righty. As we mentioned before, Congress passed a bill to end the United States military assistance to Saudi Arabia in their war on Yemen. Donald Trump vetoed it, which I'm not surprised at, because it's really a U.S. war on Yemen to try and smack them down for breaking free from the regime change the U.S. imposed on them some years back. So Trump is a war president. All of his talk about getting us out of these foreign entanglements during the campaign, it was, as so many other candidates have said, it was a lie. It was a complete lie. And Trump is definitely a disappointment here. Tulsi Gabbard is out there saying that Trump is Saudi Arabia's servant as he refused to end U.S. support of the Yemen war. Now, I like Tulsi. I obviously don't agree with her on a lot of her liberal policies, like the Second Amendment. And I hope she does well. I'd like to see her do well. But she does not understand the dynamics behind the war in Yemen. She thinks it's all Saudi Arabia, and it isn't. So anyway, story coming out of therealnews.com. Mike Pompeo is setting the stage for war with Iran. I don't know about you. We've been hearing about war with Iran for decades. We've had Israel out there saying that Iran is on the verge of a nuclear weapon for 30 years now. Iran's on the verge of a nuclear. They're going to nuke us all. They're going to come and kill us all. It'll be a new Holocaust. Iran is the new Nazi Germany. Man, do you not ever get sick of all the bovine excrement that is being flung at your head by people like Netanyahu? So basically, Mike Pompeo was asked if the 2001 authorization for the use of military force could be used to attack Iran on the basis that Iran supported the 9/11 attacks and is connected to Al-Qaeda, which carried out the 9/11 attack. So 9/11 and the 2001 AUMF, that's become the president's carte blanche for going to war. And with Trump vetoing that resolution on Yemen, he's basically changed the way wars are fought in this country. Wars are declared, rather. Now, the Founding Fathers set it up so that only Congress could declare war. They didn't want a chief executive who could just haul off and say, yeah, we're going to go to war against this or that person. But we're there now. We are there. Ever since 2001, American presidents have had the ability, let's not say the authority, but the ability to send your kids to anywhere on the globe, kill a bunch of people who've never done anything wrong to us, have your kids killed and crippled, bring them back home, and then after that basically abandon them, ignore them. They're doing it in Yemen. They're getting ready to do it in Venezuela. And according to this article, they're getting ready to do it in Iran. It's very, very frustrating. It's very angering. That's not what this country is supposed to be. Jimmy Carter is right. We're the most warlike nation on earth. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones. John in British Columbia. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Yeah, when these presidents start going in or campaigning, like Obama's was, it's time for change.
Yep.
And he didn't really change much. And then you got Trump comes back and says, I'm going to make America great again. But it seems like the way he's going, like most people would think, making America great by getting industry back in and infrastructure and all of that kind of thing. But what he's done is he's taken them to war and being great as being the toughest guy in the block type of thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. I mean, certainly back in the 2016 campaign, I thought Make America Great. And back then he was talking about it. Make America Great was bringing back the factories, bringing back the infrastructure, making this nation what it once was. And you're right. Exactly. Presidents may come and presidents may go, but the war machine just seems to go on forever.
Well, it's like I can't remember something about a movie. It was what if somebody declared war and nobody went? And
yeah, that was a very popular anti-war poster from the 1960s.
Yeah, and it's like, why, if that's what they're doing, can't people just refuse? I know they'll say, it's like New Zealand, you do this, we're going to throw you in jail for 10 years. But that, it's getting to the point now where people have to actually stand up and say no to these guys. I know sometimes it's a hard thing to do, because you're afraid of the repercussions.
Well, Lieutenant Aaron Watada did that back during the Iraq War, and they gave him a really, really hard time.
Yeah, and this is why people are reluctant to do it. But even with Assange, at least he's taken a stand. I don't agree with what they're doing there. That's this, or even what they did in New Zealand. Even if you showed the video of that, you got 10 years in jail. Or even to talk about it?
There was something funny about that. I mean, the idea that if you even had the video on your machine, you could go to prison for 10 years. Yeah, there's something very, very wanky about that.
Well, see, because the way I'm looking at it is like all the things that have happened, of different things they've done, red flags.
Yep.
When it gets out there, there's people out there who work in that kind of business, and they can pick out deficiencies, right? Or hey, wait a minute, that's got nothing there. Like in the Boston thing, there was no blood on the ground, and the guy's got his legs missing. They're just And some people believe that, and they keep pushing that agenda, and to make people afraid of saying anything. But anyhow, you had a heck of a time yesterday. There was, hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Oh, sorry, you went quiet. I didn't know. I thought I had been cut off, but lost my train of thought here now.
Well, you were talking basically about false flags and how it's getting very risky for the government to let information out on the internet, because there are people out here with expertise who will rip it apart, like I did the Vincent Foster photo all those years ago, which kind of ruined my life.
I think that's why they, in New Zealand, that's why I think they're coming down so hard on it, because apparently there's some that Max Coogan, I think his name is.
Yeah.
He's in Australia right now. And he picked out stuff that's on there, that things were there in part of it, and then you look back later and things are gone. It's like, and that's why I think they're coming down so heavy, is because they know that the people are going to pick it apart and find out it was just another red flag. And that's not saying that people didn't get killed. I don't know for sure. Right?
Yes.
But it was another one of those things where people got shot and there was no blood or no nothing. I mean, they could have dragged a body out of a morgue somewhere, for anybody, as far as anybody knows.
Yes.
But when they start, well, they're starting it now anyway. When they start letting people find out the information, I mean, that's why they're after Assange, because he let out the information about the shooting of those people standing on the side of a vehicle.
Yep.
And that's all he let out. Nobody else was killed. Like, it wasn't like he let out some information that had somebody got killed somewhere or started something off someplace else. It was just that one particular thing, and they were embarrassed about it. And apparently, I heard that the pilots of that got a medal.
Which is kind of weird, because I mean, they completely misinterpreted what was going on the ground. They saw these two guys carrying cameras, and they said, "Oh, got to be weapons, got to be weapons." They saw another guy carrying a tripod and said, "Oh, that's got to be an AK-47." And they uncorked the 30-millimeter cannon on these guys, and it turned out it was a Reuters news crew. And you get medals for that.
Yeah. Well, somebody should have gone to jail for that. That's for
I
sure.
agree. I absolutely agree.
Not Assange. I mean, they're using that two-bit excuse to get him back to the States, and I could almost guarantee that once they get him there, it will change to something else, some kind of espionage thing.
Yeah, they're going to try and get him under Title 18 somehow. But again, if he's got good lawyers, they're going to go back to that Nixon versus the New York Times, Washington Post decision, which says, as a journalist, if he did not solicit this classified information, if he did not ask for it, if he did not participate in the breaching of the classification, then he's off the hook. And he has a right to publish, because the whole point of the First Amendment is for the media, whether it's corporate or independent, to basically keep the public informed about what the government is doing, especially when they shoot up a Reuters camera crew.
Yeah. Well, that being the case, I think they'll be pounding on Chelsea Manning.
Chelsea's in jail, and apparently they're going to keep her there until she agrees to testify against Assange.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're going to make it really tough on her to get so that she's going to say, "Oh yeah, he did ask me for it," kind of stuff.
Yep.
So in both cases, I think the public ought to take a really good look and a hard thinking on what the government's going to do or what they intend to do. But you're not going to find out until after it's done.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mike, I'll let you go. You had it pretty bad yesterday. I was listening to you. It was all downer news.
Well, it is. It's all downer news. It's very hard to do this job, to be very, very honest. I mean, I'd love to be reporting up news.
You go to bed at night. Yeah, you go to bed at night and you got all this terrorist shit, and you got all this other stuff going through your brain.
Yeah.
About what they're doing.
know?
Yeah, both Claire and I, it's a problem for both of us, and
I would imagine. Yeah.
you know, we try and compartmentalize, we try and put it away, but sometimes it is just overwhelming. I mean, I'll be asleep at night, and I'm dreaming just being here at the computer, you know, cutting and pasting and posting and reading, and you know, there is no let up, and it is a very, very difficult job to do. I'd love to be doing fun news here. I mean, I'd love for some corporate news network to hire me and give me the science beat, where I get to go on out and do news stories about like SpaceX and fun things like that.
Well, one other quick note I wanted to ask you. I was trying to phone you about before. With this bribing schools to let their children in.
Yeah.
One lady apparently spent $500,000.
Yep.
With that kind of money, you got to hire 10 tutors to educate the kids so the kid could get in there on his own merits. And then partial to that too is, but that kind of thing happens too with all the politicians, the ones that voted to. I don't know whether it was loyalty to Israel or something like that. Anyway.
Well, according to Cynthia McKinney, when you are a member of Congress, you are required to swear an oath of loyalty to Israel, which I would not. You know, I absolutely would not. You get one oath and one oath only. I solemnly swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to same. That's the only oath you're ever going to get from me.
Well, that's the only oath that those politicians, I don't know if they're congressmen or senators or what, but every one of them that swore allegiance or signed that document, swear allegiance to Israel or whatever, should be fired. You know,
I agree.
Find out who they are.
Kick them out of the Capitol building. If they're loyal to a foreign government, they're of no use to the American people.
That's right. Because how do you know in their brain who they're actually loyal to? Are they loyal to America, or are they getting paid by Israel or AIPAC or whoever?
Well, no man can serve two masters. Eventually he will hate the one and love the other. Personally, I think we need to put a trebuchet up on the top of the Capitol building, and everybody who has sworn loyalty to Israel, we just put them in that trebuchet and we fling them off down toward the Washington Monument.
Exactly. Okay, then I'll let you go and let somebody else have a turn.
All right, thanks a lot. We're going to switch over to Francis in Quebec. Aloha, Francis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. I was just watching the latest video that came out a little bit ago by Steve Pichenik, and he's talking about the Notre Dame fire in Paris.
Yes.
And he's saying it's a false flag, and he's laying the blame directly at the feet of Macron as an attempt to avoid his own huge unpopularity. And he's saying, he mentioned two things that haven't come across in the press yet that I've seen, and that they took the fire department something like 29 or 27 minutes to arrive at the scene of the fire in the center of Paris. And also, it turns out there was a miracle. And the miracle was that the day before the fire broke out, a lot of the most important statues and stained glass windows were removed from the cathedral.
Okay, now what I heard is that there was the fire alarm went off and firefighters arrived in a timely manner but could not find a fire. And then they stayed around for about half an hour, and that's when the second alarm went off, and that's when they discovered there was the fire that was up there in the overhead, the framing above the ceiling, and they really couldn't get up to that one, which is why it ran out of control. Now I know the statues were moved as part of the renovation. I don't think the stained glass windows were removed, but I do know that they were saved. That they are intact, that what they're called the rose windows are still intact.
I'd heard that three of them kind of just fell apart yesterday. When the fire broke out about later in the afternoon, I'd heard that 3 of the large windows were destroyed. Maybe it appeared that way because they'd already been taken apart and removed for the renovations.
Last I heard is that they're still intact. And again, I'll take a look during this next commercial break here. Again, let's see. The company Le Bras Frères, which is the Bras brothers, this is their business. They are known as the Cathedral Restorers, and this is their business, to protect historic sites. So let me see here. Yeah, it's saying that basically the rose windows, which date to the 13th century and were last night feared to have melted or exploded, are all still intact.
Well, that's great. That's really good news.
Yes.
Well, anyway, you might want to you and your listeners might just want to go over and have a look at what Steve Bachinik has to say about that. Usually, he's pretty well informed. So, just out of curiosity, you might want to go have a look at his latest on that.
Well, again, the part that I know everybody's out there and conspiracy, cover up, linkage and everything. But again, I'm not seeing the corporate media propaganda that would be associated with some kind of a false flag, whether it's to blame the Muslims or for Macron to save himself. I'm not seeing that. Now, again, we're here in the United States and not in France, so it may not be a global media outreach, but I don't know. I'm not feeling that this is a false flag, and because there's too much missing that should be there if it were a false flag.
Well, there is a video that's out right now, taken from someone that was nearby when the fire broke out. And if you go look up one of the 2 front towers, there's like a walkway up near the top.
Yeah.
And there is a bearded guy dressed in Muslim garb wandering around. He's wearing a kippah and everything. He's got a beard, right? So there's been some speculation on that.
I'm not sure. I think that video may have been faked, and the reason I think of that.
It's got no context.
Say again.
Well, it's got no context even visually. Like there's no timestamp on it. You can't really see, like when that was taken. It could have been taken at any time, right?
Well, that's one part. I mean, there are fire hoses off to the right-hand side. You can see the fire hoses are actually working. So the context in terms of the time seems to be while the fire is burning. And unfortunately, it's a little hard to see the figure. It does appear to be wearing a yellow vest. And as far as the headgear, it's not clear whether it's actually a turban like Osama bin Laden or if in fact it's somebody in a hard hat. Again, the problem I have with it is that it's been it's fuzzy on the original screen that it's shown on. That's a dead giveaway that something's going on. And then somebody took another video of the video on the screen, and that basically makes it very, very difficult to take it at face value.
Well, at this point in history, like I tend to immediately assume it's a false flag because they pulled so many, and the politics has gone so rancid worldwide that I just almost invariably assume it.
Yeah, but you know what the word assume means. It makes an ass out of you and me. And you know something? Every once in a while, there are real fires. There are real accidents. Anyway, listen, we got to let you go. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And, well, let's talk about Venezuela right now, because we know that Venezuela is on the to-be-invaded list here. And, of course, they're still selling this idea that the reason we have to invade Venezuela is there's a humanitarian crisis. Of course, it is decades of U.S. economic warfare that has led to the humanitarian crisis. But now, of course, they want to fix it by invading and taking over the place. And it's very angering to see this happen here. And meanwhile, of course, the U.S. is still working to prevent Venezuela from selling their oil, especially to Cuba. Doesn't look like that's a way to ease the humanitarian crisis, to keep the sanctions in place. And it's almost like our foreign policy doesn't really make any sense. And it's like they don't care anymore. This is just it. You know, this is what we're doing. Yes, we wrecked Venezuela. We're going in to invade them for humanitarian reasons, even as we continue to starve them by blocking the sale of Venezuelan oil to Cuba. Okay, I just got an email from somebody saying that the figure that was walking on the balcony on one of the towers looked to them like a Knights Templar. Okay, maybe. Now, not too long ago, India had a test of an anti-satellite missile, and it was clearly a message sent toward China, and it could exacerbate New Delhi's rivalry with Beijing, underlining that India now must brace itself for long-term space competition. Now, back on March 27th, India managed to shoot down its own low-orbit satellite with a ground-to-space missile, making the country a space power. The test made India the fourth country in the world after the U.S., Russia, and China to have ASAT capabilities. Now, they had the satellite was coming from north to south. The interceptor was coming from south to north. So, in theory, the vast majority of the debris fell out of orbit and re-entered the atmosphere. But we don't really know. That's part of the problem. We don't really know. A lot of it could still be up there. Turkey is over there expecting, apparently, that Donald Trump will use a waiver to protect Turkey if the Congress decides to sanction Turkey over the planned purchase of a Russian missile defense system, the S-400. And apparently, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said last week that Washington had told Turkey it could face retribution for buying the S-400s under a sanctions law known as Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. All right, we got to take another break here. We'll be back with hour number 3 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're talking about all kinds of things. It's hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And let's see. Iran's parliament has now passed the vote declaring the U.S. Central Command is a terror organization. This, of course, was tit for tat for the United States declaring the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization. And in both cases, it's silly. You're dealing with state actors, uniforms, chain of command. They're not terrorists, they're military. But it was done to basically help Netanyahu steal his election, which is more and more, that's obvious what happened. More and more of the precincts in Israel are saying, boy, we had a really good voter turnout. We had 140% of the voters turn out over here. Turkey is being a little bit upset. They're concerned over U.S. arms shipments to the Syrian Kurds. And a prominent Turkish political analyst is underlining Ankara's concerns about Washington's continued arms shipments to the Kurdish militia, warning of the U.S. plans against Syria's territorial integrity by setting the stage for Kurdish independence. Now, the Kurds have been a little bit of a complex issue for a while because the United States had previously promised the Kurds an independent Kurdistan. They were going to carve it out of mostly Syria. that didn't work out all that well. So now they're gazing on parts of Iraq with avarice. Okay, once again, we're getting claims, and again, grain of salt. This is from Post News D2. Satellite images from last week show movement at North Korea's main nuclear site that could be associated with the reprocessing of radioactive material into bomb fuel, a U.S. think tank said yesterday. Notice the way they phrased that. It could be associated. Well, the way you reprocess radioactive material into bomb fuel, it's done indoors. It's not something that you see outdoors. This is just more propaganda, but they do have a comment that is accurate. If there is new reprocessing activity, it would underscore the failure of the second summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un in Hanoi in late February. Now, North Korea may be reprocessing material into bomb fuel. That's how you get bombs to be built. You take spent reactor fuel rods, which are loaded with plutonium, and you turn them into bomb fuel. And right now, North Korea has a right to do so. And in the face of U.S. belligerence, certainly has a motivation to develop some kind of weapons of deterrence, which is what nuclear weapons are for. Nobody has used a weapon of mass destruction aggressively as a first strike since the United States bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Everybody builds and stockpiles these weapons as a deterrent. The message on those bomb cases is simple. Leave us alone or bad things will happen. That's why Iran wanted nuclear weapons. That's why Iraq wanted nuclear weapons. It's why North Korea has built nuclear weapons. It's basically a message. Leave us alone. Do not invade us or bad things will happen. That's the message that's on those bomb cases. Okay. Now, we've all seen the Humvees on the road, the military version, not the civilian version. We've seen them in movies. We've seen them driving on TV shows. But apparently the military, not happy with that one, came up with a new vehicle, the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle Program. And it's already being criticized as having been designed for the last war, not the next war. So in March, the Army's saying they're going to cut funding for the JLTV to free up money for future modernization projects. The Army plans to buy only 2,500 JLTVs in the fiscal 2020 budget request compared to last year's purchase of 3,300. So they're saying they're going to have a mixed fleet of Humvees and JLTVs. We know that, and we'll buy a lot of JLTVs. We know that too. But I can't tell you today whether the cut we make in the budget is the last or not. So the JLTV and the CH-47 Chinook Block 2 were among 93 programs Army senior leaders selected for cuts over the next 5 years to free up billions of dollars for bold modernization strategies. Basically, what it is the military's running out of money. With all the money that we have given them, they're coming up short, and they're starting to cut programs. All right, let's take a phone call. Jim in upstate New York. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I called you a couple of days ago when initially the Notre Dame fire started, and I was very impassioned about what was happening. You know, I'm witnessing this, iconic, numerous accounts. I've been, went to Gregorian chants in Notre Dame. I was very passionate about, what I was seeing. But again, there's certain things that are just not adding up on this. And again, coming from an architectural standpoint, I said to you, this is stone structure. Yes, there is timbers hidden within the structure.
Yes.
And especially like a lot of the formwork hidden in the structure itself. In other words, they would build an arch, they would leave the formwork behind. There's a lot of oak timbers left there. But, however, as a building inspector as well, to ignite a timber is very, very difficult. In other words, the only thing I can think is plausible is that maybe some guy was soldering next to a timber, and it couldn't. It takes a lot to get a timber going. That's why in the construction industry, timber, or I should say, in the international codes, they're considered a very low fire hazard. And to go back, we had a caller about 12 callers ago. I was saying, hey, listen, this is a little suspicious. And I just wish you could keep your mind open. That to take a timber structure that's been around for so long, and all of a sudden it just ignites. And again, my passion was, this is my iconic, Roman Catholic church going up in flames. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I just just want to maybe apologize for being jumping to the gun or whatever. But to ignite timbers is extremely difficult to do. It really is. And they have a
okay. To ignite the timbers would be difficult, but on the other hand, my presumption would be that there's also a lot of dust up there that's accumulated over the centuries, and that dust would act as basically as tinder. But again, we know there was a crew that was working on that spire. The spire is itself wood and lead, and that means that unless they were using hand tools up there, everything that they were using could throw sparks in all directions.
Yes, my suspicion is this, and it had to be somebody soldering or something. Someone had an open torch that was exposed to a timber for a long period of time. Because what it is timbers, you can take a 2x12. You can ignite that very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
Take a 3x8, a 5x8, an 8x8. It's extremely difficult to ignite one of those things. And I'm not, I don't mean to go into conspiratorial land, but something just doesn't add up. You know what I mean? And I mean, this thing's been around since the 800s. So why didn't it?
Well, let's pull back here at a wider view here and look at how many ruined cathedrals there are all across Europe and Great Britain that have burned down in the past. And they're still partly standing, and they're still revered, and they're still tourist attractions. They're not used for services anymore. Unfortunately, these buildings do have a tendency throughout history to burn down. This one just burned down now. And it again, the French authorities are saying it appears to have been an accident, and they are investigating this company whose business supposedly is restoring these historic buildings without burning them to the ground.
Yeah, but again, that's making a case for, if these guys are so cognizant of, these timbers igniting, or, they're special, that's their specialty. Well, don't you think they have the foresight to say, listen, don't do that, you know what I mean? Or don't solder next to this, or don't, you know what I mean?
Well, we all hope they're going to have that, but people will make mistakes. I mean, look at Challenger, look at Columbia, look at all the people who were supposed to be keeping an eye on those, and they Challenger blew up on launch, and Columbia basically fell apart during reentry. Mistakes happen.
Right. You can speculate also they use cheap labor. Know better? I don't know. You know what I mean? There's a whole host of things out there. But number one, I want to apologize. I jumped to the gun. But again, my spidey senses said, again, comes, but as they say, the chief stinks in Denmark. You know what I mean? You know, and when I seen the configuration here, and I seen this Holocaust going on, I was like, my God. And I mean Holocaust from the true sense of what the word Holocaust means. It means a giant fire. I was just, you know, emotionally taken back by it. You know?
Well, it was a shocking event. I mean, even for those of us who are not religious, you know, we understand the importance of Notre Dame in history and art and architecture. And yeah, it was terrible to see it happen.
Right. And unfortunately, you inferred that I was saying it was the Muslims. That's the furthest from my thought. Furthest thing from my thought. You know what I mean? And I'm not calling out on it or whatever, but I kind of felt terrible when you said that to me. You said, "Oh well."
Well, I apologize.
You know, and sir, you know, that's the first. My suspicion is it's Macron trying to get a general consensus, and I know what you're saying. In other words, he would have revealed, it's the yellow vest guys. You know, and there's no evidence there yet. But just keep an open mind about it. And
well, I am keeping an open mind. You know, I'm not ready to say I'm absolutely convinced there was no false flag or no chicanery here. Right now, though, I'm leaning to agreement with the Parisian authorities. It was a terrible, tragic accident on a structure that was very flammable because apparently concerns had been raised.
No, it's not flammable. It's not flammable. It's not.
Because, Jim,
again, as a building inspector.
Jim, okay. Concerns had previously been raised over the condition of the timbers up there in the roof as to how dry they were and because of their age. And so, yeah, there was a concern that was already raised that they were, in fact, very flammable.
Yeah, maybe it should have been, you know, some kind of like fire suppression system put up there or whatever. I agree with
that. Would have been nice. That would have been nice. The reason the fire got out of control is they literally could not get up into that part of the cathedral to deal with the fire.
And again, I just want to see the investigation. In other words, there had to be a guy with an open flame literally on a timber. He literally had to be smoldering this timber because timbers do not, it's sort of like 9/11. You know, people say, oh, steel doesn't, you know, I think that's BS, but, you know, it takes a lot to get a structure like that, which has survived since 800, to be ignited. You know what I mean?
Okay,
so
well, we don't know how old the timbers in the roof were. I mean, because Notre Dame has been renovated many times. It had to go through a major renovation after the French Revolution. But again, how flammable how flammable the timbers are is definitely related to how old and dried out they are. Because if, for example, they were cracked or they had been eaten by worms and termites, then you have more surface for the fire to begin with. And again, it could have been a hot piece of welding rod that just fell onto a timber and just smoldered until finally it caught a blaze. And I'm sure at some point they're going to find out what was going on. But again, it was a horrible, tragic accident, and all I can say is it's a good thing the damage wasn't worse than it was. The stone structure is still intact. They're going to be able to rebuild. The 3 rose windows are still intact. The altar is intact. The cross is intact. They got the relics out. They got the 14 statues out. The organ is a little damaged, but obviously that can be rebuilt. It was rebuilt 20 years ago anyway.
Right. But unfortunately what it was when you were witnessing this, you know, on the news media, you know what I mean? They just showed it. It's like, you know, this thing's like going down. You know what I mean? And when I called you, I was very impassioned, and I just want to, you know, apologize. You know, maybe I inferred, you know, more nefarious things than should have been, but You know, that's what I love about you. You know, let's let the facts roll. Let the facts come in. And unfortunately, I made a knee-jerk reaction to it. You know, my architectural background, like I said, and I know structures. I know how things burn, and beautiful structures in the world. You know, so I just wanted to put that out there for you, sir. That's all.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to let you go. Let's see. Temperature lead would burn at, because that spire in the middle of the roof of Notre Dame was wood and lead. And apparently the melting point of lead is 600 degrees Fahrenheit, which, well, I knew that because I used to make my own ammunition. Well, at some point, I'm sure we're going to find out. But I think the problem was primarily that they couldn't get up into that roof. So I just got an email from somebody saying that CNN is now reporting one death in the fire at Notre Dame. The name has not been released until the family's been notified. What we know at this time is the deceased is a white Caucasian male and a hunchback. Okay, so we're coming up here on another commercial break here. And a lot of people are still talking about Bibi's election hit, if you will, and the quite probable annexation of the West Bank. So we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. America, welcome back to our show here. And interesting little story here. Apparently, the Veterans Affairs Department's watchdog is investigating a new office created by President Trump early in his administration that was supposed to protect whistleblowers from reprisal. It's now facing allegations of aiding retaliation against them. Now, you know, with all the mishandling of money over at the Pentagon, there's a lot of whistleblowers that have been coming forward. Something like, it's like 2 per day. That's how bad it is. And Trump created this office that was supposed to be helping to protect the whistleblowers. It's apparently under investigation for retaliation against whistleblowers. Way to go there, Don. And of course, everybody is still talking about the allegations that the Obama administration spied on the Trump administration. And in our current political climate, if you will, everybody's spying on everybody. But it's rather amazing to see the Democrats come on out and go, harumph, harumph, how dare you? How dare you dare to say that we were spying on the Trump campaign? And they're trying to draw a fine line, because we know there was electronic surveillance that was authorized by the FISA court. And James Comey is out there saying, well, you know, electronic surveillance, it's not really spying, you know. Just like, you know, waterboarding isn't really torture. And trying to sort of weasel word their way out of it. But again, you need to remember that the FISA court warrant to conduct electronic surveillance on the Trump campaign was based on hearsay information backed up by nothing, unverified hearsay paid for by the Clinton campaign. So, yeah, they ginned up an excuse to make their spying look legitimate, but it absolutely wasn't. It was a hoax. It was an absolute hoax here. Okay, good news over at CNN. CNN has hit an all-year ratings low, according to Nielsen Media Research, and the network is especially hurting during prime time hours. Apparently, they have actually fallen behind the Hallmark Channel. That's how bad it is. Now, CNN had enjoyed a ratings boost thanks to Russiagate. Oh, they were out there, Russiagate this and Russiagate that, and the viewers, at least the Democrats, were tuning on in. Well, now that the Mueller probe fizzled away, the audience is leaving. And CNN has had their lowest rated week of the year in prime time. while MSNBC had its second lowest rated week of the year in the 25 to 54 age demographic and its third lowest among total viewers in prime time. Fox News and MSNBC are consistently the two most watched basic cable networks, but they, along with CNN, are losing viewers relative to 2018. Well, nobody likes being lied to. And if there's one thing the collapse of Russiagate has reminded everybody about, as if they needed another lesson after Saddam's nuclear weapons, the corporate media lies to you. And that's why their audiences are leaving the corporate media. They're coming over to Republic Broadcasting. They're coming over to whatreallyhappened.com because they need a source of information that they feel they can have a little bit more trust in. And trust in the corporate media, it's just not there. Not after they got lied to for 2 years continuously about Russiagate, not to mention however long it was we were lied to about Saddam's weapons of mass destruction, his nuclear bombs, he's coming for us, he's got gas, he's got anthrax. So, I remember thinking a while back how nice it would be to actually have a high-paying corporate media job. Corporate media is not going to be around much longer. I just need to figure out how to get this job to pay me a little bit more so I can get some bills paid. Alrighty, over in Colorado, there was this teenager, Sol Pace, 18 years old, and apparently she boarded a Denver-bound flight Monday, and she was known to be obsessed about Columbine. And because of that, there was a massive manhunt. They were looking for her. They finally found her. She was dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound early this morning near the Echo Lake Lodge at the base of Mount Evans in Clear Creek County. All right, here's the question I need answered. Was she on prescription antidepressants? We know the shooters at Columbine were on those. There's just too much bizarre behavior going on in our society. We need to deal with that. Are we, in fact, being medicated into insanity for profit? We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And getting on back here. Apparently, the infighting that is going on, it's like looking at a room into which too many cats have been put in. And they lock the door and the cats are just scratching at each other. Apparently, Michael Moore is now scorning Nancy Pelosi for attacking Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other women of color. And he's saying that her time is over. Of course, a lot of people have been saying Pelosi's time is over for a while, and she still manages to hang on, despite evincing symptoms of age-related mental deterioration. But she still hangs on there. Let's see. Now, Melania Trump apparently got snubbed by Vogue magazine. Now, Vogue has had a history of putting the first ladies on the covers. They did Michelle Obama 3 times because Michelle Obama inspired so many women and doing wonders for fashion. I question that one. But they've decided they're not going to put Melania Trump on there, saying, well, you know, she's already been on the cover of Vogue, and she's a model, she's been there, done that, we don't really need to do it as she's first lady. And I think they're just being petty, they're being liberal. I think Melania is the hottest first lady this nation has ever had. I don't read Vogue, but if I did, I would definitely quit. Cancel my subscription here. Okay, now presidential candidate Andrew Yang has proposed to create a new federal news and information agency to punish those seeking to misinform the public. Basically, he's flipping off the Bill of Rights. So that's it. It's a ministry of truth. Andrew Yang's ministry of truth. We're going to have a government agency which is going to say, you're only allowed to say what we think that you should say. So much for the First Amendment. Well, Yang, you're not going to get my support to be President of the United States of America. That First Amendment is sacrosanct. And a lot of people, I will grant you, they misuse it, they abuse it. But that's a price we have to pay. When we let the government decide what can and cannot be said, we're in big, big trouble. Okay. Now, apparently there's a big stink rising up between Kim Foxx and Jussie Smollett. And apparently Kim Foxx has called Jussie Smollett a washed-up celeb who lied to cops in text messages, which actually sounds like a pretty accurate description to me. I mean, Jussie's career, is over. He may finish out with Empire, but I can't imagine any other producers hiring him for a show after this ridiculous situation. Okay, Wolfgang Halbig, as you know, he is a school safety inspector. He's been talking about Sandy Hook. He and Alex Jones were facing some serious legal action from one of the so-called parents from Sandy Hook, and they unfortunately had to back down. It was a classic case of lawfare. But Wolfgang Halbig still has his famous list of 16 unanswered questions that demand truth. Who directed the New Haven FBI field offices to classify the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting on December 14th, 2012? In other words, who told the FBI to conceal information, to restrict information? Why would the FBI classify the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting when they did not classify the Columbine shooting, which also was a mass casualty shooting incident? Who on December 14th, 2012 was the incident commander as required by FEMA in directing the mass casualty shooting incident at the Sandy Hook Elementary School? Who on December 14th, 2012 at the Incident Command Center made the ordering of porta potties a high priority since they were delivered within 3 hours of the school shooting? And who ordered those porta potties from Southbury, Connecticut? It's one of the weird ones. When I called the porta potty company after searching for over a week as to who and when they were ordered, I was told it is classified, and they're not allowed to share that information with anybody. The next morning I received, meaning Wolfgang, received a phone call from the Southbury Police Department at my home telling me not to call that company again because I was harassing them. So then Halbig goes on to say, high priority for toilets, but not for Lifestar trauma helicopters or paramedics. And he goes on to say, why did they not request Lifestar helicopters, knowing that children and school staff were seriously injured and clinging to life? Who made the determination not to request them? Why did they not allow the paramedics and the EMTs inside the Sandy Hook school to treat the seriously injured or those children and school staff clinging to life? Who made that decision? Who declared all 20 children and 6 school staff members legally dead within the first 8 minutes? Who was the certified environmental biohazard decontamination company contracted by the Newtown Public Schools to remove 45 to 65 gallons of blood, skull fragments, brain tissues, bodily fluids, blood-soaked carpets, and many other materials to be decontaminated inside the Sandy Hook school? Why does an off-duty lieutenant from the Newtown Police Department refuse to leave his off-duty work assignment at a construction site on December 14, 2012, when hearing that shots have been fired at the Sandy Hook Elementary School? Who at the Newtown Public Schools notified in writing, as required by Connecticut law, all of the parents who had children attending the Sandy Hook Elementary School, as well as every school staff member every school year of all the potentially life-threatening chemical hazards. The school had high levels of lead paint throughout the entire building, asbestos in the ceiling and floor tile, asbestos in the insulation, and very high levels of PCB. Who provided the urgent medical care to the 2 children who were not transported to the Danbury Trauma Center until an hour after the school was deemed safe for that 15-mile drive? Who treated those 2 children who'd been shot multiple times, 3 and 11 times, since they did not allow the paramedics and EMTs inside the Sandy Hook Elementary School? Why did the parents of the 2 children who died at the Danbury Hospital not allow their children to donate their organs to other children waiting for the gift of life? What happened to the 500 children and 60 school staff members from Sandy Hook Elementary School on December 14th, 2012? No videos show any evacuations. Who was the police officer calling into the Newtown police dispatcher stating in his words that he has multiple weapons, he has a rifle and a shotgun? And who had that rifle and shotgun, as the chain of evidence should show, that was found in classroom 8? At 9:45:21 a.m. on December 14th, 2012, why would a police officer by the name of Lieutenant Vangeli from the Newtown Police Department, after finding a kindergarten female child in the hallway, make her go into room 8 and leave her? Room 8 is a gruesome crime scene with dead children and school staff. And finally, why would 2 Connecticut State Troopers enter room 10 at 9:55:31 a.m. on December 14th, 2012, a gruesome crime scene with dead bodies of children and school staff, and tell a kindergarten boy they found in the bathroom, whose name has never been revealed, to stay and they'll be back when it's safe? Now, those are all very, very interesting questions here. Okay, over at Instagram, they have banned cartoonist Ben Garrison. Now, you've probably seen his cartoons. We post them at whatreallyhappened.com all the time. He's a very clever gentleman. He's very pro-Trump. And apparently, this recent cartoon that he did, Two-Faced Democrats, didn't sit with a lot of people, didn't sit well. And the cartoon basically showed the donkey, just sort of the head sweeping back and forth, saying on one side, we support gays, and on the other side, we support Muslims, and there's a bunch of Muslims throwing rocks at the gays. So apparently that one was just a little bit too much for Instagram, and Ben Garrison has been banned from them. All right, a little bit of economic news. My goodness, we did get into the third hour a little bit early. World trade has suffered the biggest collapse since the 2000 financial crisis. And apparently it is the worst and as dangerous as the dot-com bubble burst. Excuse me. Apparently, trade volume around the world has dropped 1.8% in the 3 months to January compared to the preceding 3 months in a synchronized global downturn. Now, I wonder how much of that is caused by the sanctions and the tariffs. It may not, in fact, be a recession, which everybody's saying is coming. But all these sanctions and tariffs, they have to be having an effect. All right, it's only April. Story out of Investment Watch blog. And U.S. retailers have already closed more stores than they did all of last year. Last year, U.S. retailers closed 5,864 stores. And this year, just to date, retailers have closed 5,994 stores, and it's only April. Now, I had a little talk with one of our local retailers down at the mall, and he didn't seem all that concerned. He basically said, well, you know, it's the online sales. It's the online sales. I'm not sure. I think people are just out of money. And they just can't they can't buy stuff. See, I don't like buying online. And the reason is because I don't get to actually see the product until I already own it. I like the retail experience. I like walking into a store. I like being able to look at the product and make sure that it's well made, especially in the area of clothing, that it doesn't have loose threads or anything. I like looking at it, and then I take it up to the person at the cash register. I give them money. They give me my product. We both come home happy. I like that experience. I don't like buying online. I mean, I have to, because so many of the specialty stores here in Hawaii have gone out of business. I have to buy a lot of stuff from eBay, spare parts for computers and so forth. But I do enjoy going into a retail store and just looking around, just looking for things. See what inspires me, especially if I'm, buying a birthday present for a young person somewhere. I like being able to look through the toy stores. I find them actually very inspiring. U.S. soybean exports have plunged. Farmers are concerned about the tariffs. There's no recovery in sight. And current data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture revealed that the total U.S. soybean exports reached 460,000 metric tons last week, down from 888 tons in the previous week, and just above the 446 tons in the same week a year ago. So they're loading those soybeans onto vessels. Apparently only 130,000 tons were being sent to China, which is China's way of retaliating for the sanctions here. We've been hearing about the pension time bomb all across Europe and Great Britain. There's one here as well. There's a pension time bomb. It's waiting to explode across America. Social Security is broke. It's full of IOUs for all the money that was borrowed from the Social Security Trust Fund, starting with the Clinton administration. And they issued a special Treasury bond, which they can't redeem now. And so for people for whom Social Security is the only retirement they have, they could find themselves in serious, serious trouble in the not too distant future. Now, as you know, we just went through tax day, and everybody's always talking about, taxes are too high. And they are very high. Do you know when the income tax was first imposed, right after the supposed theoretical ratification of the 16th Amendment? The American people were promised the income tax would never be above 2%. That was another lie, obviously. But according to this article, there's a poll that finds that when people talk about raising taxes, they're okay with raising taxes as long as it's other people. Don't raise my taxes. I'm taxed way too much. If you need to raise taxes, go over and raise taxes on that person over there. Go raise taxes on the rich. Go raise taxes on those people on the other side of the railroad tracks. I think that's a poor way to be looking at the situation. We are all taxed way too much by a government that is out of control. And even with all the money they're taxing, they still can't control their spending. Our deficit for this year alone is projected to be almost $1 trillion with a T dollars. They're completely fiscally irresponsible because they've got their printing presses. Their friends over at the Federal Reserve, yeah, we'll just type some more numbers into your computer account. We'll just print up more of these bills here. It's all funny money. It's not real. It's not real money. Real money is silver and gold coin as specified in the Constitution. Kind of makes you wonder, why is there even a national debt? They're just making the money up out of thin air and spending it. Why is there a debt that we are somehow responsible for? Well, because it justifies high taxation, and high taxation keeps us poor and helpless, and that is where the government wants us to be. We got to take a break for commercial. Back with the last segment of our program today after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program today here. And a little bit of good news. Project Veritas, as you know, had been taken to court for a defamation case. And Project Veritas has won. The court basically ruled their videos were accurate and were not deceptively edited. So they're out of that mess. A little bit of good news on that one here. I'm looking at this article, and it's talking about, again, Notre Dame and what got saved and what did not get saved. So let's see. This article is saying that the organ is in good shape. So that's a good thing. Apparently, quite a bit of the artwork was spirited out of the cathedral while it was just the roof on fire. That's been taken to the Louvre for conservation. Okay, we've got one final caller. Dustin, New Jersey. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I know you don't like to get too called, but Mike, I got you with the Notre Dame thing. I want people to keep this in mind, though. You said it yourself. They raised $600 million after the fire.
Yes.
Mike, was this a UNESCO World Heritage Fund site?
Let's see. I'm not sure. I imagine it probably would be.
Do you know they needed a minimum of $100 million to restore? This was before the fire. They only raised $2 million before the fire, though, of the $100 million they needed before the fire.
Well, actually, the budget for the renovation was just $6.8 million. They weren't planning on doing a complete rebuild prior to the fire. Yes, in fact, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So apparently UNESCO is going to be getting involved in the rebuild. Yeah, they've raised a huge amount of money. And a lot of people said, why did they need it? The Catholic Church is worth $30 billion, although I'm sure a lot of that is going, to make bail for all these priests with wandering hands.
But France is broke. I mean, I know some people calling like Macron. There's rumor Macron. You don't bring in the third world to burn down something to kick out the third world. Macron's a globalist, so that whole thing is off the table. Okay, so like it would be, what they call Jewish lightning per se, like torch the thing to get more money for the project. Like insurance, right? I mean, it happened. I don't know. I mean, I'm not there. But, it's 50-50. It's either action or it was insurance to get this lot of donations, more than what it's worth. $600 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, they're going to be able to do a fabulous job on that place, and it's going to take about 5 years. And I'm sure that there was also an insurance policy on the premises. And by the way, that $600 million is all from private donors. So, a bunch of billionaires stepped on in and said, yes, we're going to get this taken care of. But yeah, it's up to 600 million euros. And they're going to do a great job. Okay, there's the music. I need to let you go, Dustin. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please share what you learn here on this radio show and at the website. Share it with everyone that you know. Email, face-to-face, paper mail, and so forth. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.